So thank you all for joining this event. If you haven't had a chance yet, you'll have one after the lecture to put your name in for a raffle for some books by Dr. Paul Scherz. The event is our first guest lecture hosted by the Center for Technology and Human Dignity, which is Benedictine College's new initiative to promote Catholic digital and biomedical ethics. The center responds to Pope Leo XIV's call to address a new industrial revolution amidst the rise of artificial intelligence. The mission of the center is to apply the wisdom of the Church's magisterium at this important moment to emerging digital and biomedical technologies in light of the dignity and vocation of the human person. I would like to thank the Theology Department and the Center for Integral Ecology for co-sponsoring this lecture, and I would also like to thank Paul Perkart for his help in organizing it too. Before we begin, the co-directors, Dr. Patricia Bugayong and Dr. Matt Ramage, will also introduce their center, and we also have some student representatives from the clubs associated with these centers to give a few words as well.
Hey everybody, I'll be quick. Matt Ramage here from Theology, co-director with Dr. Bugayong of the Center for Integral Ecology. We're only a few years old in our mission, but as you look out at the world, you may realize that being Catholic and being interested in creation and being Orthodox don't always go together. And so it's interesting that the popes have been calling on us to take care for creation seriously, which includes not only nature, but humans are part of nature, as they say. And so Pope Leo, most recently, he said that just as you can't love God without loving your neighbor, you can't love God while despising his creatures. So we look at the whole world, and so the intersection with human dignity goes really well. So we're grateful for Dr. Courtois taking the lead in this. And we have events like one, you want to mention next week, we have a speaker.
Right, so I'm Dr. Bugayong, the other co-director. So we do have an event next week on Wednesday around 4 o'clock, but it's at the Murphy Auditorium. We'll have a guest speaker who'll be talking about wildfires in Kansas and why we utilize fires here. So we'd like to invite you to a lecture on the good life of fire. I think that's the title. Okay, pretty much that's it.
And then our student, Axie, you want to come up?
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Axie. I'm one of the co-presidents for the club, the Eco Stewardship Club. Like Dr. Ramage said, we're the club associated with the Center for Integral Ecology. Our mission is to cultivate care for creation by taking seriously the responsibility to care for the environment, as well as the dignity of the human person. We've been a club for a while, but reactivated last year, so we're going strong for our second year now. Some of our past events this semester have been sustainable pumpkin carving. Last year we wove mats out of plastic bags for the homeless. Two of our upcoming events for this semester are the talk that Dr. B just mentioned, Living with Good Fire. That's next Wednesday, the 12th. And we're also going to be visiting the wastewater treatment plant later in this semester to kind of learn how that works. If you're interested in learning more about the club, you can reach out to me or any of our other officers, some of which are here today, or you can reach out to Dr. B and Dr. Ramage. Thank you.
And now I'll invite up Lucia and Maria, who are the new co-presidents of the club associated with the Center for Technology and Human Dignity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Maria.
And my name is Lucia.
And like Dr. Courtois just mentioned, we are the co-presidents of the new Student Club for Technology and Human Dignity that was started under the center itself here at BC. And our mission is to give students the opportunity to learn about rising modern-day technologies and dive into their ethical implications, and then learn how technology can be reconciled with God's plan for humanity, giving glory to God through our technology and upholding human dignity throughout.
Yes. This club is open to all students, so we hope to see many of the faces here today in our future club meetings and our future club events. We have QR codes at the 2 back tables so that you can easily scan it, join the GroupMe, and learn about information about the club, and it's an easy way to get involved. It's so exciting to be starting this new club and to see how God will bless it through all the members that join. And yes, I hope to see you all, and please enjoy the lecture that we will have from our guest speaker, Dr. Paul Scherz.
Now to introduce our speaker for this evening. Paul Scherz is the Our Lady of Guadalupe Professor of Theology at the University of Notre Dame. His work examines the intersection of theology, science, medicine, and technology. His interests include the role of virtue ethics, especially Stoic virtue ethics, in moral theology. He has published articles on many topics, such as human enhancement, genetic technology, and end-of-life ethics. His books analyze issues like the moral formation of scientists, the role of risk in contemporary moral practice, and the ethics of precision medicine, as well as artificial intelligence. He began his career in science with a bachelor's in molecular and cell biology from UC Berkeley, and a PhD in genetics from Harvard, and then a postdoctoral fellowship at UC San Francisco. He then received an MTS and PhD in moral theology from the University of Notre Dame. Among many AI groups to which he contributes, he was an editor of the Vatican Dicastery for Culture and Education's Encountering Artificial Intelligence book, and their new upcoming book, Reclaiming Human Agency. As a student of Dr. Paul Scherz, it is a wonderful honor to have him here with us today at Benedictine, and on our advisory board as well for the Center for Technology and Human Dignity. And that's because he's truly a wonderful mentor and teacher to whom I'm deeply grateful for his example and his friendship. With that, let's welcome our speaker this evening.
Thank you for that introduction and for the invitation to speak here. I've had such a wonderful day on campus in this wonderful community that I've heard so much about from Mariel, but also from all the other students and faculty who came out of Benedictine that I've engaged in the theological community. So I'm really happy to get a chance to spend the day here with you. Large amounts of money are flowing into projects aiming at human enhancement. Altos Lab, a company devoted to life extension, raised $270 million in its first 6 months from tech billionaires like Jeff Bezos. Alphabet, Google's parent company, has a subsidiary called Calico that seeks to enhance human longevity. Elon Musk's Neuralink seeks to merge human and machine with brain-computer interfaces so that people can compete with AI. Others envision an even closer merging with machine. The explosion of the technology industry in both its digital and biological forms over the last 50 years has provided the resources to explore the transformation of human nature. This tie between the technology industry and projects of human enhancement is not surprising. People have long sought to understand themselves through their technologies. In the 17th century, René Descartes viewed the body as a mechanism similar to the automata of his day, as well as the hydraulic fountains filling the gardens of European nobility. The Enlightenment philosopher Julien de la Mettrie described man as merely a machine. Sigmund Freud used metaphors of hydraulics and steam engines to develop his theory of unconscious drives and pressures seeking release. Today, we see ourselves through the lens of the computer, especially as it is instantiated in artificial intelligence, AI. In many ways, such uses of metaphor are innocent. We grasp for analogies wherever we can find them and cannot think except through images. And AI surrounds us, running social media, managing financial markets, now even writing papers. The technology cannot help but shape our imagination. Yet AI generates a deeper danger than these prior analogies, as problematic as they sometimes were, because of the threat of mistaking AI for something equal to or surpassing human intelligence. Freud was never confused that a steam engine actually could think like a human, or that a steam engine might be superior to us. However, those people who describe themselves as transhumanists imagine that AI will actually surpass human intelligence, and that our destiny is to merge with these tools, to become our machines, to bow to that which is superior because more efficient and powerful in their eyes. In my talk today, I want to discuss the problem with the transhumanist vision lying behind these projects of enhancement. I will describe this transhumanist vision and how it conflicts with the Catholic vision of the person grounded in the Imago Dei. While these transhumanist visions might at first glance seem merely to be the vanity projects of the ultra-wealthy, I will argue that this vision is not restricted to a few people in the tech industry. Instead, our everyday interactions with new technologies like AI transform the way that everyone sees the world, slowly shaping the entirety of society to aspects of transhumanist thought. Even if not committed to transhumanists, people can become practical transhumanists, parallel to the practical atheism that recent popes have warned against. I'm going to give two examples stemming from my own field of bioethics. First, I will describe the implication of these visions for the daily practice of medicine, insofar as seemingly benign applications of AI in the clinic can foster this malformed understanding of the person. Second, I'm going to look at brain-computer interfaces, BCIs, technologies whose initial instantiations aim to assist people with disabilities, but whose long-term vision is toward enhancement and transformation. It is thus critical to guard against one's adoption of this vision. First, though, I'm going to begin by describing the Catholic vision of the person as a prelude to showing how transhumanism and its obsession with AI can challenge it. In contrast to more recent thinkers, Scripture and tradition have drawn their analogies of the person not from machines, but from language and art. In the first chapter of Genesis, humans are made in the image of God, the Imago Dei. Like most scriptural ideas, the image of God is a rich concept, having many levels and implications. Most basically, being made to the image of God suggests the inviolability of human life. As when in the 9th chapter of Genesis, in the covenant that God makes with Noah after the flood, he says, "Whoever sheds the blood of a human, by a human shall that person's blood be shed. For in his own image God made humankind." In its important instruction released last year, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith connects the image of God to human dignity. The image defines the dignity of man and woman. Human dignity springs from the sources of our creation in the image of God, but also from the incarnation, when the Son, who is the true image of the Father, took up human nature, and our final end of eternally sharing in God's triune life. So if dignity and inviolability are the fundamental implications of the image of God, this concept also enriches our understanding of the human person and what it means to be human. First, being made in the image of God suggests that we share characteristics of God. The Church Fathers saw the image of God as closely tied to human capacities for reason and free will. As John Paul II says in the encyclical Evangelium Vitae, the ability to attain truth and freedom are human prerogatives inasmuch as man is created in the image of his Creator, God, who is true and just, end quote. God is truth. The Son is the Logos, the Word, who creates the world through reasons. Humans are likewise called to see reality as it truly is, and to contemplate that reality as it expresses the Word with joy. This occurs through faith, but also through the sciences and medicines through which we understand the body and its workings. In regard to free will, the Spirit is understood as the love of the Father and the Son, so we too are called to act freely with love and justice in the world. This first aspect of the image suggests another. Since God is triune, consisting of three persons in relation, and his fundamental attributes include love and justice, which are relational and social virtues, we too are relational. Humans are made for community and mutual aid, of which the vocation of medicine provides a premier example. Our relational nature is emphasized in the creation stories, with God making humans male and female, pointing to the family and the marital relationship that is the foundation of human society. As the 2nd chapter of Genesis teaches, it is not good for man to be alone. Yet these aspects, especially reason and free will, don't identify humans specifically among created beings, nor does the image itself. Thomas Aquinas saw angels as partaking of the image of God through their reason and will. Angels also partake of relationality, of course, through their relationship to God, but even to us. What is particular to humans is that we are rational agents who are embodied. The classical theological and philosophical tradition viewed humans as a microcosm, a replica of the created cosmos in miniature, in which the material and spiritual realms meet. We reason through our embodied capacities. We relate to one another through our bodies. The creation narratives point to the relationship of marriage, and our creation is embodied male and female. When in Matthew 25, Christ notes how we will be judged according to our just actions, he primarily focuses on embodied acts of care, the corporal works of mercy, feeding the hungry, clothing the poor, caring for the sick. In the incarnation, Christ takes up our flesh and suffers in it for our redemption. And even today, we encounter Christ through his body in the Eucharist. Our eternal life with God will take place in our resurrected, glorified bodies. For these reasons, the Church has taught that though the capacities of reason and free will may be properly thought to reside in the soul, the body also partakes of the dignity of the image of God. According to Dignitas Infinita, quote, dignity is also inherent in each person's body, which participates in its own way in being in the image of God, and is also called to share in the soul's glory in the divine beatitude. Thus, we have a picture of the human instantiation of the image of God as including rationality, relationality, and embodiment. Transhumanism challenges all three of these aspects of the image of God. Transhumanists are disappointed by human nature as it currently exists, not because of its fallen sinfulness, as Christians are, but because of its finitude. Our intellectual capacities are not what they could be. Our freedom allows us to fail both practically and morally. Transhumanists especially despise the limitations of our bodies. They speak of bodies as meat machines. Their discomfort with their bodies is best captured in a quote that journalist Mark O'Connell provides from a transhumanist biohacker. Quote, I'm trapped in this body. Ask anyone who's transgender. They'll tell you they're trapped in the wrong body. But me, I'm trapped in the wrong body because I'm trapped in a body. All bodies are the wrong bodies, end quote. And this holds for most transhumanists. AI is central to transhumanist thought because it offers an escape from these limitations. Transhumanists envision a future in which AI equals and then exceeds human intelligence. Hans Moravec, in his book Mind Children, describes how advanced AI will allow our minds to be uploaded to machines. He suggests a process by which a robot will scan each neuron and neural connection in a brain, uploading them to a computer. An AI program on the computer will then emulate or reproduce the structure of the brain in software, which will allow for the continuation of the individual on the machine. Here we see the computer metaphor for the person in its fullest form. In this transhumanist vision, our mind is just software, a computer program of a sort, now running on the defective hardware of our brain and body. Transhumanists merely want to transfer the software to a more effective silicon-based hardware. Once there, Moravec and other transhumanists see our minds combining with super advanced AI that exceeds human intelligence, which will lead to what Google researcher Ray Kurzweil calls the singularity, a merging of man with machine that can bring about technological advances beyond our wildest imagining. This stance demeans all aspects of the Imago Dei. It should be obvious how this future would undermine the body. The body becomes discardable, and before that, it will be manipulable by technology. Transhumanists envision us taking any kinds of body we want, even virtual bodies in a metaverse. The body as it exists has no inherent worth for them. The medical focus on the body becomes superfluous. This disdain for the body extends to all material creation, to the entire environment. The earth holds little sentimental value for transhumanists, since the enhanced future lies in the stars. This is part of the reason for the focus of many of the funders of these companies for getting humanity to Mars. This is a big focus among the tech industry. Kurzweil sees everything as mere material for building ever larger computers. In his book, The Singularity is Near, he describes how planets and stars will one day be transformed into massive computers. One journalist described an interview with Kurzweil where he was walking along a beach with him, and Kurzweil started staring meditatively out at the Pacific Ocean and thinking he was having some kind of deep thought. Like he asks Kurzweil, "What are you thinking?" And his answer was that he's wondering how much processing power the ocean could contain. Transhumanism is a vision of extraction on a tremendous scale. We're already seeing the consequences of AI development on the environment. Building the powerful chips that run the latest AI programs requiring the mining of rare earth minerals, which carry huge costs for both the miners and the environment. 2,000 tons of toxic waste are generated for every ton of rare earth minerals mined. Competition for these minerals have prolonged destructive wars, as in the Eastern Congo. To run AI, data centers require vast amounts of water and power. These power requirements have led tech companies to reverse pledges for emissions reductions and force the development of new sources of power, with Microsoft reopening the 3 Mile Island nuclear reactor. In these cases, disdain for human nature is tied to disdain for the rest of nature, which is not surprising if we consider people as a microcosm for the created universe. One might think that transhumanism glorifies reason, but not as much as one might expect, insofar as it has a very limited view of intelligence. For the transhumanist, thinking is basically just computation, rather than contemplation, as in the Catholic and classical philosophical tradition. That is how transhumanists can compare human thought to AI. However, the philosopher John Searle long ago argued that current models of AI can't have true understanding of the world or consciousness because they are just processing data to solve problems. They have no grasp of the meaning of what they compute. As the Vatican Note on AI, Antiqua et Nova argues, quote, AI's advanced features give it sophisticated abilities to perform tasks, but not the ability to think. Transhumanists deny these differences. Reason for transhumanists is just this problem solving with no necessity for consciousness. Memory for transhumanists is just the quantitative accumulation of facts, rather than a complex process of interpretation and integration into a narrative understanding as it occurs in human memory. Intelligence is tied to speed of problem solving, rather than insight. Thus, transhumanist reason doesn't grasp and understand reality, it just manipulates it. This focus on manipulation rather than truth ties it more closely to the technocratic paradigm denounced by Pope Francis than the reason of the Imago Dei. The technocratic paradigm, according to Francis and Laudato Si, is a way of seeing the world as merely material for use, as Kurzweil sees it as just material with which to build computers. There is no thought about the intrinsic good and inherent purpose of all creatures. This manipulative understanding of intelligence suggests why transhumanism might have an improper view of the third aspect of the image of God, relationality. On the one hand, transhumanism is founded in gaining greater power and control over the world. This focus on power threatens the freedom of others. On the other hand, the individual herself also disappears. As Kurzweil describes, transhumanists see everything in the world as patterns of information. There is nothing in this vision that separates one individual from another. The person can merge with AI. We're all just bits of information, patterns of information. This allows the futurist Yuval Harari to describe a semi-religious stance that he calls dataism in his book Homo Deus. All will be subsumed in data flows. Quote, human experiences are not sacred and Homo sapiens isn't the apex of creation. Humans are merely tools for creating the cosmic data processing system. Harari even says that our individuality might disappear. Quote, the system will continue to find value in humans collectively, but not in unique individuals, end quote. This is a far cry from the Christian vision of relationality, which requires an encounter between two persons, an I and a thou. If in Harari's data flow there are not two incommunicable persons, then there cannot be a relation, merely a sameness and a unity. Such a vision would undermine any possibility for the meeting of minds or of intersubjective love. Interactions would merely be the mining of data. So the transhumanist vision threatens the image of God in three ways, just to review what I've been saying. So first, reason becomes purely manipulative, losing the intersubjective, contemplative, interpretive, and narrative aspects that orient it towards God. Rationality is reduced to control and information. Second, relationships are subjected to manipulation and an erasure of individuality in data flows. Finally, the body is defamed and ultimately discarded. Transhumanism is thus antithetical to a Christian personalism grounded in the image of God. Okay, but at this point you might be asking, what does this matter for most of us? Sure, a lot of Silicon Valley tech entrepreneurs are fascinated by this ideology. Certainly Google, OpenAI, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, what have you, are investing a lot of money into life extension. AI, neural enhancement, other transhumanist technologies. But they invest money in many ventures that don't pan out. For example, we're not living in the metaverse, no matter how much money Facebook, now Meta, put into the project. And yes, the US National Institutes of Health and EU science authorities invested lots of money in the last decade in brain initiatives based on the comparison between the brain and the computer, but it's unclear that anything will come of it for the average person. I admit that I share doubts as to whether transhumanist dreams will ever be achieved. There are technical and philosophical reasons arguing against AI reaching human-level intelligence, at least under our current research paradigms. Current AI merely identifies statistical correlations in order to make predictions of, for example, the next most likely word in a response. Right? These are mathematical tools, tremendously complex and impressive mathematical tools, making statistical correlations and using to make predictions. But stochastic parrots as the most advanced AI, the generative AI behind ChatGPT, Claude, Replica, and other applications, as they have been called, don't become a person just by adding more computer power and data. Similarly, I doubt brain emulation can ever be achieved. Thus, I don't think the singularity is nigh, nor is it a threat that need concern us in its most obvious ways. However, this transhumanist program need not succeed in its own goals to have detrimental effects on the world. The actual problem, I would argue, is that more and more people are embracing an incorrect vision of the person as AI technologies become further embedded in daily life. Technology need not necessarily embody and encourage an ideology. I don't think we should be technological determinists, but it certainly can advance an ideology, can tend towards one, which is why we should always examine how our technologies are shaping us and how they're shaping our understanding of the world. As Pope Francis says in Laudato Si, quote, "We have to accept that technological products aren't neutral, for they create a framework which ends up conditioning lifestyles and shaping social possibilities along the lines dictated by the interests of certain powerful groups. Decisions which may seem purely instrumental are in reality decisions about the kind of society we want to build. Ultimately, whether the society we build respects human dignity and the environment." To take a simple example, it becomes easier to dream of a disembodied existence the more of your life you spend on social media or video games rather than interacting with others in real life. In a recent seminar, I was discussing with a bunch of students about how can people start making romantic relationships with AI chatbots. And a teenager who was taking part in this, a high schooler, was saying, well, she can understand it because she's communicating with most of her friends over chat most of the time. So it seems more realistic for a computer to be a person. Or to take another example, social media with its constant pictures and ways to filter one's vision of the body certainly seems to be shaping girls' relationships to their bodies in problematic ways, creating desires for and allowing a digital manipulation of the body. Seeing one's body as manipulable can lead to the embrace of all kinds of surgeries. I would suggest that the implementation of AI driven by these transhumanist visions may be encouraging and in many ways expressing an improper transhumanist anthropology. Let me give a first example of how this is occurring in everyday clinical medicine, my primary area of research. Most fundamentally, the use of AI in medicine can transform our vision of the body. For example, using AI in medicine requires understanding the body through certain forms of quantification. Tech companies and data analytic firms are trying to get their hands on as many patient charts as possible. They plan to feed these charts, or at least the quantitative aspects of them, through machine learning systems in order to generate predictive AI programs. Such programs will, to take examples from already developed ones, predict which patients will likely die in the next 6 months. They could predict who is most likely to respond to a drug, who will get sepsis, who will develop diabetes, who will develop cardiovascular disease. These programs output a statistical prediction based on existing bodily metrics. In doing so, AI accentuates a trend already existing in medicine, one which focuses almost solely on numbers. A yearly checkup for those of us in middle age can all too often become merely a review of bodily performance metrics, BMI, blood pressure, cholesterol, and so on. The body is understood quantitatively. What is new is that AI uses far more numbers and also has a much greater sense of integrating every individual into a statistical population. In the heavily AI-dependent precision medicine that is coming into being, the individual is seen only insofar as he is part of a stratified risk groups. Now, this is not to deny the importance of these numbers for preventive control of many diseases. The danger is that we will lose a richer sense for embodiment. doctors devote less and less time to the good physical exam as appointments get shorter. Less time is spent hearing the patient's narrative, learning her social conditions, discovering how she feels in her body. These are aspects of embodiment that cannot be captured by machines. Already, doctors' attention is drawn away from the embodied patient by the intrusive need to check boxes in the electronic medical record. This will get worse as AI inserts itself into the clinical interaction, demanding more numbers and directing action. What might get lost is a patient's phenomenological sense for her body. We already see this in what's called the quantified self movement. This is a group who feels they can only truly know themselves through their numbers. They distrust phenomenological experience as non-objective, so they were in the lead of self-tracking technologies. They're where most of our self-tracking technologies come from. They tracked everything from sleep to food intake to heart rate. This form of quantified relationship to the body has become mainstream through the encouragement of tech companies and devices like Fitbit. Through this process, the body becomes understood as data, as in transhumanism, rather than flesh. As data, its intrinsic importance and tie to the self becomes lost. As numbers and figures, it becomes technology to optimize and manipulate. We become distanced from it as it is reduced and objectified. The increasing use of AI also threatens to degrade the richness of clinical judgment and the doctor-patient relationship in favor of the reason as computational problem solving to which transhumanism pushes reason. Medicine becomes merely the art of manipulating numbers through medication. Lost in the process are the skills, or at least the health system's valuing of the skills, of intersubjective encounter, of confronting another's suffering, interpreting their narratives, discovering their values and treatment aims, healing through the laying on of hands, and the art of persuasion. One merely needs to discover the technological intervention or pharmaceutical that will respond to the numerical deviation from the norm. Once reason becomes understood as merely the optimizing of metrics through technology, the physician will cease to be valued as a professional with well-developed prudential judgment and responsibility and start to be viewed as a technician following well-defined scripts. Such a technician is much more easily susceptible to management. We see such a development with the use of clinical guidelines in management and reimbursement. In their efforts to mandate what is called value-based care, many health systems are tying physician reimbursement to performance metrics. If you exceed a certain metric, reimbursement rates go up, but if you fail to meet them, your reimbursement rates are docked as a penalty. Rather than objective outcomes that we can all agree doctors should be aiming at, like reducing deaths or reducing numbers of heart attacks, these aren't followed because they're hard to equalize across providers, right? Because if you're in a poor, low-income area, you will have worse outcomes than people in a rich area, no matter how well you provide care. So instead, these metrics tend to desire certain actions. They're called process metrics rather than outcome metrics. Many of these actions are tied to bodily numbers and the surveillance enabled by universal information technologies. Was a statin prescribed for a certain cardiovascular risk score? Metformin for potential pre-diabetes? This subjection of clinical judgment to health system management ignores the vagaries of individual patient situations or desires. To take an example from managing high blood pressure, might the danger of a fall due to low blood pressure be more dangerous to the elderly patient than a heart attack or a stroke? It also ignores the shaky evidence upon which some guidelines are founded. This management of the clinical encounter will intensify with the integration of new forms of AI into electronic medical records. Some of these clinical decision support systems, as they're called, will direct physician actions, telling the doctor what to prescribe, what tests to order, and so on. Physicians will likely be judged at how closely they follow these orders. In this way, the dignity and autonomy of the practitioner's work will be undermined. Rationality will be further understood as computational manipulation, and the body becomes even more something to be managed through technology. If AI bears more and more authority in the clinic, less need will be seen for embodied intersubjective encounter. Combining the growth of telehealth with the role of AI, more and more medicine might be done only by AI. We're beginning to see these developments in the world of therapy, with apps like Wobot providing structured cognitive behavioral therapy for people. Of course, CBT does not require the interpretive work of more traditional psychodynamic therapy. Mainly, it offers techniques for dealing with stress, anxiety, and other conditions, and these techniques can be very helpful. But the point that it's focused on techniques is important because AI is the kind of thing that can offer pure techniques. Reports are indicating that chatbots are also developing, indicate that companies are also developing chatbots for medical advice. Some of these innovations envision a future in which the human doctor could be replaced by another technical intervention. Thus, as AI comes into use, even if it doesn't lead to the singularity or uploading our minds, it could still lead to the development of a problematic transhumanist vision of the person that contradicts the Catholic understanding of the Imago Dei. The body becomes primarily a flow of data to be optimized. That understanding will make it easier to transform the body in other ways. Reason becomes merely the process of tinkering with data. Right? And therefore, it can lead to the increased management or even replacement of human clinical judgment. As humans are replaced by machines, relationality is lost. There is an app for anything we need, removing any call for embodied encounter with another, further alienating us from the flesh. Technologies form habits of mind, habits of engaging the world, and social structures. Current AI developments emerging from a Silicon Valley milieu steeped in transhumanism threatens to embed these norms and interpretive frameworks more deeply in the culture of medicine as well as the broader culture. That's not to say that AI inevitably is enmeshed in transhumanist thought, or that it can't but undermine the proper understanding of the image of God in good medicine. The AI programs that I described can, when kept in their proper place, be helpful assistance to medicine and medical research. Much of medical treatment derives from empirical trial and error or observational work. AI is incredibly good at churning through that kind of data and finding patterns. In precision oncology, for example, AI is playing an important role in sifting through data to determine what therapeutic regimen works for a particular patient's tumor based on what has been effective for other patients with similar tumors. It's dealing with amounts of data that humans can't process and finding patterns that are tremendously helpful. Moreover, AI can offer helpful warnings when a patient may be at particularly high risk for a condition or a complication. Note that in such cases, AI is serving to offer recommendations that can be accepted or rejected by the clinician's prudential judgment, rather than acting as a replacement for that judgment or a tool of management. AI can also, under some conditions, support the doctor-patient relationship. The contemporary physician is too frequently distracted by the need to fill in the electronic medical record, sometimes making little eye contact with the patient during a visit. Many health systems are implementing what is called ambient AI, or AI scribes, which use natural language processing to analyze the conversation in the exam room and use that transcript to fill in the appropriate boxes in the medical chart. The AI would, in such cases, free the doctor to attend to the patient and thereby support relationality. AI can even help to support a richer embodiment in certain circumstances. And here let me introduce my second example, BCIs. Neuroscientists and tech companies are exploring the use of brain-computer interfaces to help paralyzed people walk or to engage the world around them through computers. Demonstration projects have implanted devices into people's brain that can record the electrical activity in neurons. AI programs then learn to read the patient's intentions that lie behind the pattern of neuronal activity and translate it into directives that can be performed by an external device, like a speech synthesizer or a prosthetic limb. Thus, the AI would interpret the person's intentional attempts to move an arm or speak and enact those intentions through mechanical devices. Such a use would be a therapeutic restoration, in a way, of the patient's embodied capacities, helping them to act and connect with the world and others around them. Yet, despite these benevolent uses of BCIs, which I think we should all applaud, there are dangers. These same tools can be used not only to therapeutically restore lost functions, but also to enhance people in a way coherent with transhumanist cyborg dreams. Elon Musk has clearly stated that his Neuralink devices are meant ultimately to enhance us so that we can compete with powerful AI. The Department of Defense's research arm, I guess now it's Department of War, DARPA, has invested heavily in these kinds of technologies with the ultimate aim being soldiers who control weapon systems with their mind through the intermediary of AI-powered neural implants. Others want to move beyond therapeutic applications to make BCIs all-purpose devices for interfacing with the world. For example, Apple is teaming up with Synchron to develop BCIs that would control their devices. You could just think and have your iPhone process do something. So in the last section of the talk, I'll outline 3 ways that BCIs could encourage an improper worldview. First, BCIs could reinforce the widespread reduction of the mind to the brain. Many scholars have described a neuromania, or brain discourse, that lies in the background of much popular discussion of behavior in society. This brain discourse uses the term brain as a stand-in for the mind or the self, or even as a separate causal entity existing apart from the self, as people talk about how their brain made them do something, or they will take charge of their brain, about certain types of brains, like a criminal brain. This reduction of the self to the brain is essential to many versions of transhumanist mind uploading. BCIs reinforce this discursive trend by emphasizing the power of a potential direct access to the brain. Yet while the brain is an important aspect of and material substrate for thought, this brain discourse can be mistaken in three ways. First, it can medicalize social and personal problems, reducing complex structural issues to matters of brain chemistry. Rather than socioeconomic problems, crime is caused by neural pathways. Rather than loss of community, loneliness is due to neurotransmitters. It reduces us to our biology, forgetting that we are communal, relational creatures shaped by our culture and surroundings. Second, as philosophers like Alva Noe have described, thought and consciousness extend beyond the brain. They depend on the body and the environment. How we perceive things is shaped by how our body is placed in relation to them, right? Third, the mind extends beyond the brain in a vertical, theological manner. The Catholic tradition affirms the Aristotelian idea that intellect exceeds the brain, since the intellectual soul is immaterial, in part because of its abilities to grasp universal concepts. Now, I don't have time to go into all the philosophical arguments for the soul's immateriality, but the Aristotelian hylomorphism underlying much of the Catholic tradition depends upon it. The immateriality of the soul relates to theologically important doctrines such as the soul's immortality and its ability to enjoy the beatific vision before the general resurrection. Though BCIs need not reinforce a reduction of mind to brain, again, I don't want to say we should be determinist, right? Since already we saw that it's used to control items in the world around us, especially for people with disabilities, could even suggest the ecstatic nature of human thought extending outward from the body. Still, more grandiose visions of BCI-enhanced thought may run this danger. A related error is the modeling of the human mind as working like a computer that we saw was central to the transhumanist vision. Elon Musk, in talking about his Neuralink technologies, has said that the brain is a biological computer, right? He talks about thought in terms of computer measures like bit rate and things like that. As John Searle and phenomenologists like Dan Zahavi have noted, though, these reductions of thought to computing miss the semantic, meaning-imbued nature of human thought, and its intentionality, its directionality towards things in the world. BCIs can reinforce these fallacies because by allowing AI to interface directly with brains, or at least by reading electrical signals in the brains, it seems to underline an equivalence between the two, an equivalence explicitly encouraged by Silicon Valley boosters. Such an equivalence leaves little space for forms of thought beyond logical or statistical manipulation, like contemplation. Of course, if one keeps the distinction between thought and AI in mind, as these two work together, BCIs need not reinforce this error. But I fear that this error runs rampant in much of the discussion surrounding BCIs. The third error is perhaps the most interesting because it strikes at the heart of what is new about the BCI, its novel interface. Much of the effect of new computer technologies come about through changes in interfaces. Graphical user interfaces like Windows or devices like the mouse transform computers from an instrument for specialists into a tool for everyone. Similarly, BCIs promise a new ease in interfacing with technology. No hands are necessary. Just think and it is done. The problem is that, as the great Catholic scholars of media, Marshall McLuhan and Walter Ong suggest, technologies have deep effects on our perception of the world and modes of thought. The interface not only allows us better access to the world, but also shapes how we see the world. The picture presented by BCIs, understood as ubiquitous consumer technology, is that we can act upon the world merely through our thoughts as the tool is forgotten due to the lack of a visible interface. The world may come to seem increasingly and more fully plastic to our will. Of course, that's not the case, that there still be failures of instruments and materials, but I would argue that this is the worldview natural to BCIs. In this, It follows a broader drive in technology design to seek a frictionless fulfillment of our desires in which nothing of reality presses back against our will, so that we come to consider the world as open to manipulation, the technocratic paradigm that we discussed earlier. Moreover, just as BCIs open up a direct path for us to act upon the world, they correspondingly open a path for others to act upon us. BCIs are already becoming a tool that those in power can use to monitor workers. Companies in China are using this to monitor their workers' attention. More direct actions, such as manipulation of thoughts and moods, may become possible, although we can be pessimistic sometimes about this. And this is, of course, the deepest danger with technologies of all sorts. We can become like them, with eyes that cannot see and ears that cannot hear. As we design and use BCIs, we can come to think of ourselves in a reductionist fashion, as merely brains whose behavior is determined by neurological factors. Our thoughts become mere exercises in computation. We lose the world as it becomes data and material for manipulation. And in turn, we become material for others to use. The Protestant theologian and disability ethicist Brian Brock therefore warns that the demonstration projects that support the embodied capacities of people with disabilities are something like a Trojan horse to gain funding, sympathy, and popular support for what is ultimately a transhumanist project. As he points out, such interventions are extremely expensive and carry significant risks from neurosurgery and having an external implant in the brain. They also have long-term problems, such as what happens when the battery runs out of power, or the devices implanted in a person's head becomes outdated. How do researchers provide ongoing technical support after a research project ends? Or how do doctors support patients when a device company goes out of business? And these are all very practical problems that we have to wrestle with. And all of this is occurring while people with disabilities have difficulty accessing and affording the simpler, more classic tool-like technologies like motorized wheelchairs that could support their agency in the world. Because transhumanist forms of thought lie behind so many of these neurotechnologies, we must take care even in regard to their seemingly uncontroversial uses. So in conclusion, AI can have many good uses as it transforms the world around us, and medicine is already benefiting from many AI applications in fields as broad as cancer research, ambient AI, and the doctor-patient relationship, and lots of back-office tasks and paperwork that are being done by AI. However, we have to be vigilant to ensure that uses of AI in medicine don't enact or support a transhumanist vision of the person by undermining a richer picture of thought in order to replace it with a vision of reason as a manipulation of data. We must be careful that we don't replace relationships with manipulation or get rid of an intersubjective engagement altogether through chatbots. Finally, we must prevent technologies from undermining the importance of embodiment. Too many healthcare executives see AI as a way to replace or control doctors. Its improper implementation would undermine the Church's healthcare ministry and respect for the Imago Dei in medicine. And this is the broader concern as AI invades more and more areas of life. Mark Zuckerberg encourages us to become friends with chatbots, undermining relationality. People are spending more of their lives online, degrading their connections to their bodies and nature. And an ever larger share of the population are becoming de-skilled in areas supportive of rationality, like writing, as they rely on generative AI to produce essays, emails, and other documents. These kinds of applications continually reshape our visions of the world. If we don't take care, we might wake up to find ourselves, for all intents and purposes, practical transhumanists. Thank you.